We're going to get started here. My name is Nora Luongo. I am on the internal marketing team here at Whereoware. Today's topic is Predictive Analytics 101. We gave this a longer version of this last year or earlier this year. It went over really well. So this time we're going to condense it down in just 15 minutes. We're going to get started really soon here. As always, we are recording this session. We will send out the slides afterwards, and we'll also send out a case study that we go over today in the presentation. If you're on Twitter, feel free to tweet along with us with the hashtag #WowWebinar. If you have any questions during it, please chat them to us, and we'll try to get to a couple after the webinar, obviously being mindful of everyone's time. So if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you after. So look out for that follow-up email either later today or tomorrow morning. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Brian. Take it away.
Thanks, Nora. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Salka, and I'm the business analyst here at Whereoware. And I've been working in the analytics field for the past 6 years, and specifically the last 3 years have been here at Whereoware, and I've been a part of helping develop our analytics infrastructure and develop predictive models for our clients. And predictive analytics has really helped us and our clients solve challenging business questions, and it's been a really valuable service offering as we continue to expand our data offerings here. So a little bit about Whereoware. We are a privately held digital agency with over 19 years of experience. We're located in the Washington, D.C. area, and we help our clients with a variety of technological and digital services from developing personalized websites all the way down to data and predictive analytics. So with that, we want to get into predictive analytics, specifically what it is, and give you and share some of the tips that we use to start our model development. And at the end, we're also going to share a case study based on a particular predictive model that we developed for one of our clients. But first, we like to start off with some interesting statistics, and this one has been published by Forrester Consulting back in 2017. And it says that nearly 50% of CMOs who use marketing intelligence experience improved customer satisfaction. And that's a very powerful statistic moving forward, especially given how new data is being used in very new and interesting ways. So expect this number to be climbing up even higher in the coming years. So with that, what is predictive analytics? Predictive analytics uses a lot of different complex techniques from a lot of different fields, from mathematics to statistics and computer science, but predictive analytics really just has one simple goal, and that is to use past data to provide an assessment of what's going to happen in the future. So we're going to touch up on how to do that with these upcoming slides. So why is predictive analytics so important? So it really does touch so many industries that we're familiar with in our daily lives, from cybersecurity when you log into your bank site, to optimizing marketing efforts, determining credit scores, sports teams' projections. These are just a few ways of how it's being used today. And in addition to these types of common use cases, we're going to show you about how our team used predictive analytics to project and re-engage at-risk customers, as well as predict their future value based on past buying behavior. So I know many of you might be asking yourselves, how can I get started with predictive analytics today? And I wanted to discuss some of the steps that we follow when we start the development of our predictive models. So the first thing and the most important is that you really want to have a very clearly defined objective. And when it comes to predictive analytics, the objective is, what do you want to predict? And this is where you're going to really start to develop your strategy for getting everything that you need to start making predictions. But more importantly, you really want to focus on how you're going to use that information. So you want to come up with some initial ideas, and this is going to be that 30,000-foot view. So if you want to begin making predictions, you have to know what type of data that you have available. So you really want to ask yourself, what data do we have access to? How can we get to it? And is it usable to help me make predictions on what it is that I want to know about? And then you really need to collaborate with your fellow teammates. This is where you're going to really think about what metrics are available and how they can help contribute to your predictions. You also want to keep in mind, what will be done with my predictions. So really start to think about different scenarios. So if the results of my model are good, what do I want to do? How will I take action on it? And if the results are bad, think about the same thing. What is it that I want to do, and how do I take action on that? And then the now what is kind of like continuing on with that. You know, what actions are going to be taken? Because at the end of the day, predictions are useless unless you act on the results. And as part of our case study, we're going to show you how we got our clients to take action on the results of what our predictive model showed. So now that you have created your strategy, you really want to start putting your plan into action. So there's a couple of steps that you need to follow, and this is really where you're going to spend most of your time, because a lot of the data that you have access to, it's going to live in a lot of different systems. So this is where you're going to start connecting all of your data sources so that everything can live in one place. And by having your data connected in one place, it's really going to allow you to tell a more detailed story for your clients. And how we do this is that we use the business intelligence tool Domo for this process. And then the next step is going to be to define and cleanse your data. So you've went out to all of these different sources, you've connected all of that data, and now you're going to need to clean it. And cleaning data simply means to identify and correct for any type of missing or incomplete data that you might have. Because dirty data is going to be the major obstacle that is going to be preventing you from doing very useful things with your model. And cleaning data is also going to be one of the most time-consuming aspects of the predictive process. But at the end of the day, the cleaner your data, the more valuable your predictions are going to be. And then after you've connected and cleaned your data, you're really going to want to build compelling visuals that can really help you and your client take action on that and show the business from a different perspective. And there are a few basic skill sets that you're going to want to have. Someone in your organization is going to want to have these particular skill sets to gather the data. And like I mentioned earlier, the data you use to make predictions is going to live in a lot of different systems. And these business intelligence tools today, like Domo, they make gathering and connecting all of that data very easy. However, you're really going to need someone with data management experience that can help you identify what data sources you need and how these data sources are going to talk to each other so that you can tell that more complete story for your client. And then you're going to need, to prepare the data for a predictive modeling exercise is also going to require someone who understands both the data and the business problem. And then some of the skill sets needed to define the data, like I mentioned earlier about understanding both the data and the business problem, is the benefit of having that who understands both is that they can really help define what data needs to be used in order to develop the prediction. They understand the types of data that exist, and they know how the different data sources can be combined, both from a technical standpoint, but really more importantly, they know how to tell the story from the business perspective. And then when it comes to cleansing your data, a lot of us are very familiar with Excel, and Excel is a great choice for projects that require small amounts of data or for a simple ad hoc type of analysis. But primarily, we're going to be living in the SQL world, and SQL is a programming language that allows us to access larger amounts of data. It's going to give us a lot more flexibility to simplify the cleansing process and get a deeper understanding of what's going on with our data. And business intelligence tools they really simplify everything by creating that single environment to do all of your data-related tasks. So from integrating and storing and cleansing to visualizing data, all of that can be done in one place so that you can automate the entire process. And by automating the entire process, you can spend more time focusing on making decisions. And then lastly, you want to have the skill set to visualize the data. And what you see on the slide here is just a small snippet of some of the visuals that we've created for some of our clients. And building visuals with data is a lot like writing a story. And you really need to be able to zone in on what's important and figure out ways to make that visual insightful. And a question we often ask ourselves before we start to build visual is, what could I do with this information? Because the visual should be actionable, or it should get the user to see things from a different perspective. And if something is created that can't be one of those two things, then we usually toss it. And with tools like Domo, building visuals is easy and it's fun, and it offers a lot of options to tell meaningful stories with data. So the tools available today, they're allowing organizations to have a lot more smaller and more focused teams. And introducing predictive tools like Kraken by Big Squid, which is what we also use, means that a lot more people are going to be able to build analytical and predictive models without the use of a data scientist. but you'll still need that data or that business analyst who can help you interpret and refine your models. And where the IT support comes in is they help deploy the models. So that means putting the models to work on whatever the chosen data set is that you have that you're trying to build predictions on. And that is where you're going to, this kind of three-pronged approach is where you're going to really maximize the results. So like I mentioned earlier is that, we don't need a data scientist. Data scientist skill sets are incredibly valuable. And with these tools like Kraken by Big Squid and by Domo, they're starting to make those skill sets available to a more broad audience. And this way, all of the focus goes into interpreting the model results and making business decisions, and not on that manual process of coding all of the really detailed statistics and math that need to go into the model. And many platforms are starting to integrate predictive capabilities within their organizations. You see a couple of examples here on the slide. And these tend to be useful for making basic predictions, but usually they are limited to just be within that specific platform. So if you were using one of these tools and their predictive capabilities, you would only be getting insight from that particular system. And this is great to help you get started. However, when you start looking at more advanced business intelligence tools like Domo, they can piece all of these platforms together, and it's going to provide you a look at how all of the sources could potentially influence your prediction. And with that, now we're going to talk a little bit about how we used Domo and Big Squid to predict churn for one of our clients, MudPie. And MudPie is a B2B wholesaler and a B2C retailer that operates in the gift and home space. And when it came to predicting churn, their challenge was similar to what any B2B wholesale company faced. They have a very short range of time when their customers are actually looking to purchase each year. And in the past, by the time MudPie realized the customer had churned, it was too late, and they had missed the entire purchasing window for the year for that client. And as part of their big picture strategy, they asked us if we could try to solve two things. One was to identify the customers that were going to stop buying from them, and two, it was re-engage those customers in order to keep them buying from MudPie. And had it not been for the tools that I mentioned earlier with Domo and Big Squid, it would have been an impossible task because we would not have been able to merge all of those different data sources that they had from all of those different systems. So in order to identify which clients were likely to churn, we started out with getting all of the data. And we put all of that data into Domo by connecting to those various systems. We combined all of those sources of that buying behavior data from their website, their back office, and various offline data types of sources. And then once that data was in Domo, we were able to clean all of that and combine it so that we had a usable data source to make predictions on. And then after that, we get to import that data into Big Squid's Kraken tool, which is going to help us predict which customers were likely to churn. And Kraken helped us easily identify which metrics were the most valuable at predicting churn, but it also helped us identify which model was the best type to use. So as a result, the system assigned a probability of churn to each email address of MudPie's customers. So for example, my email, Brian@Whereoware, I might be 80% likely to never buy again. So this resulted in a successful identification of those that were likely to churn. And then after identifying the customers that were likely to churn, we needed a way to make that data actionable for our clients. So this is where the true value comes in. So one of the great things about Domo is that it's not only ingesting all of that data from all of those various sources, but it can also push data out into all of those various sources. So by taking advantage of this capability, we were able to push the results of our predicted data set into our email automation platform, which is Watson Campaign Automation. And then once that data was in Watson, our marketing team was able to start to use that data to create customized content in order to re-engage those clients that were at risk of churning. So that content could be anything from sales discounts to free delivery, but because we had that data and the buying patterns of all those people, we no longer had to guess at which offer was best. We were able to finely tune it to each individual customer, and we had a very successful re-engagement campaign running as a result of that predictive model. So that covers both how we were able to identify the at-risk customers and then re-engage those at-risk customers as well. And then you can see here This is some of the customized content that our marketing team created. As you can see how it might look on a computer screen, you know, providing them with some sort of customer code that could take advantage of some sort of discount. And, you know, we were able to customize what those discounts were based on the past buying behavior and make them relevant so that we didn't leave money on the table. So lessons learned, everybody is going to be a pro at building predictive models after this 15 minutes, which is awesome. But to go over and reiterate what we covered today, you know, have a clearly defined objective when it comes to developing that model, figure out what it is that you want to predict, and then go out and gather, define, and clean that data so that you have a usable data set that can, you know, have cleaner predictions to be built off of. And then build, test, and deploy that model. You're going to run through a lot of testing, making sure that everything makes sense from a business intuition perspective. You're going to see a lot of things that might be new as a result of the testing phase, and it's going to help you see the business and understand your data from a different perspective, and then put it to use. You know, if you don't have the data scientists within your organization to build those models from scratch and to start deploying those models, start to look into tools that combine those various sources like Domo and Big Squid, and they make putting it to use incredibly easy. And then you can solve the types of problems that we've been solving both internally for ourselves and for our clients. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Nora for Q&A. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was awesome. We are offering free 30-minute consultations with one of our customer insights experts to help you all get started with predictive analytics. So feel free to reach out. There will be information in the email that follow-up that we'll be sending out, so you can reply to that or contact us through our contact us form on our website. And with that, we're just going to answer a few questions, just being mindful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for coming on today. And like I said at the beginning, if you missed it, we are recording this. We will be sending out the recording, the slides, and the MudPie churn case study that Brian just went over. So look out for that in email either later today or early tomorrow morning. And looks like we got a couple questions here. So the first one being, how do these tools apply to companies who only sell through marketplaces and don't have their own website?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that? How do these tools apply to what?
Folks who sell through marketplaces, so like Wayfair or Amazon, something like that, and they don't have their own website.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it really just depends on what it is you would be trying to predict. You know, if you are only using a single system, for example, where all of your data is collected and it just lives in one place, then these types of tools might not be appropriate for you. Business intelligence tools capabilities are really taken advantage of when you have multiple systems that exist out there that would need to be combined to see how one system influences another. But you know, that's it really just depends on what it is that you were trying to build. So if, you know, my guess would be that if you had a single system, then these tools might not be appropriate. I hope that answers their question.
Yeah, I will see. So we talked a lot about like what data sources you can combine and using a unique ID to thread all these sources together. But are there any data sources that can't be combined?
That can't be combined? Well, it depends on a few different things. So, for example, if you have one data set that has all user level data, that might be individual revenue for users, how many times they've clicked on particular things, odds are you're not going to be able to take that data and merge it with something that doesn't have user level data. So it really needs to be some sort of apples to apples comparison between the two in order to merge them. But there are a lot of specialized techniques that you could still potentially merge those sources on different types of keys. There are a lot of creative ways to merge them. So it just really depends on what it is you're trying to get from one data set and the other data set, and on whether or not you can join them. So, you know, I hesitate to say there are data sets out there that you cannot join, because there there are some techniques that you can join just about everything.
Cool. So we talked about how to get started, but one thing we didn't really talk about is timeline. So like, how long does it take to get this set up and then start seeing predictions and putting it into play? What kind of timeline do we talk about here?
That depends on the underlying data and how well it's managed, maintained, and cleaned. The cleaner your data, the better managed. You could probably stand up a predictive model depending on the complexity and depending on whether or not you're using the tools we mentioned earlier within a few weeks to a month, let's say 2 to 4 weeks. If you are dealing with very dirty data, poorly managed data, and you don't have these types of tools, then you're going to spend a lot of time in development and cleaning mode. And I've seen models take as long as 6 months to get put into production. You know, and sometimes it takes even longer if you're not using these types of tools and you have a small organization with potentially just one developer who needs to build the model from scratch and test the model, then it can even take longer than that. So it really does vary from organization to organization, but typically if you have clean data and it's properly managed, you can stand it up very quickly.
Great. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. We just want to be mindful of everyone's time. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll be sure to follow up after the webinar and look out for that follow-up email either later today or tomorrow morning. Thanks so much to Brian for doing this webinar. It was awesome content, and thank you all for joining us. And look out for our next WOW webinar. Thank you.